So we're going to start FRQs from 2015. And so we have some box plots here. And it has two large corporations, A and B. They hire new college graduates at entry-level positions. And in 2009, the starting salary for an entry-level position was $36,000 at both corporations. At each corporation, data was collected from 30 employees hired in 2009 as entry-level, who were still employed 5 years later, and they wrote down the yearly salaries of the combined 60 employees, so 30 from A, 30 from B. Now again, here's the thing about these box plots. What they're saying is, what are the salaries 5 years later of the employees who all started at 36,000? Okay, so that'll be important to keep in mind. So for A, write a few sentences comparing the distribution. Right, whenever you compare distributions, you need to talk about the center, the spread, the possible, well, we can't really see gaps here, possible outliers, things like that. So I'll say both distributions are centered with a median around, I don't know, I'll say approximately 51,000, maybe 51, 52. Now from there, let's talk about their differences. Because really that's about the only thing they have in common. Corporation A has more variability having a larger IQR, interquartile range, or in other words, rectangle, and overall range. And then this is a big one. Say corporation A also has two high outliers. All right, that's what an outlier is on a box plot. It's when you have these dots here. Okay, now maybe it's time to, I can't really do this perfectly. I don't know how to write on this nicely like I do at school, but let's talk about what the IQR really is. What the IQR really is it's saying, what if we took the width of this rectangle, the IQR, and we multiplied it by 1.5? So in other words, what if this was just another half as big? So in other words, it'd be like if you went from here to about here. Again, if you attached another half of this whole rectangle. Now, from there, what if you attached that whole line segment, imagine it's about that long, to the end of quarter 3? You get about that far. And see, there are two data points that are farther than that 1.5 IQR. And since they're farther than that 1.5 IQR, we label them differently in our graph, and we bring the last closest value that fit within. So that's how an outlier looks here. And that's really how you're calculating the 1.5 IQR. Now also, again, that same rectangle width the other way, evidently this last value was contained inside that 1.5 IQR. All right, so anyways, that's what A has. It has more variability in general, bigger rectangle, and more variability in terms of the whiskers at the end. What else can we say here? I guess what I would say is disregarding the outliers, both appear approximately, pretty much just always say approximately. Don't talk about anything for certain. That's kind of what stat is all about. It's saying somewhat, could be, which is kind of weird. Anyways, they both appear approximately symmetric. Okay, so in other words, if I just move this rectangle line here to the exact middle, it'd almost be symmetrical around that line. This one, again, it's almost symmetrical. This one's just a little bit too short. But those outliers would actually make it too long. So again, they're both almost symmetric. It's not too crazy. At least I don't think. Now, what would something look like if it was just not symmetric? Now, this isn't part of the FRQ, I'm just kind of reviewing here. If it was not symmetric, it would look something like that. All right, in other words, if you were to try to balance it on this point here, it would totally tip this way, right? You have so much weight going on over here. Whereas again, if you balance this right here, it might not fall immediately. Same thing if you balance it here, it won't fall immediately. It's almost symmetric. Now, if it's perfectly symmetric, it'd be like a perfect balance point. Anyways, let's get to part B. This is, not gonna lie, I looked a little bit early at this question before I started the video. This was the one that I really specified why this paragraph is up there at the front. Suppose both offer you a job at $36,000 as an entry-level accountant. Based on the box plot, give one reason why you might choose Corporation A and one reason why you might choose Corporation B. Now, the thing to remember about this is you might be looking at this and saying, I don't know, a lot of different things, but remember that this is saying, what will your salary look like in 5 years? So why might you choose job A if both of them start you at $36,000, which would be about here? Why would you choose Corporation A? Because again, they both have the same median salary. And also, if you think about this, at Corporation A, you could possibly be making less money than anyone at Corporation B 5 years later. But why might you choose Corporation A? Well, look at this and look at this. You've got higher, in other words, remember, 50% of the values are, about the same. Or actually, let's break it down like this. Both of them have 25% of the data here in these rectangles. This one, 25% of the data, we don't really know where it's broken up in between, but there's only a small portion making less money. And actually, there's 25% of the data here beats this 25%, and this 25% of the data definitely beats this 25%. So anyways, long story short, why would you choose Corporation A? I would say though a few at Company A make less than any, I should say a few employees, but make less than any employees at Company B, Company A has higher possible salaries in their upper Q3 bound and I'll just say in their upper half of data. All right, so in other words, from the median on, that is half, because remember this line right here is telling you, actually this is telling you where 25% of the data is. This is telling you where 25% of the data is, 25% and 25%. So the upper half has higher values, right? Anyways, part B, again, you could put some more nuance to this because really it's like even the third quartile contains more range of data than Company B's quartile, third quartile. So you might want to emphasize that as well. Okay, part 2. Same question, but why might you accept a job at part B? Now again, there's kind of two things I can say here. At Company B, everyone who remained after 5 years was earning more money than when they started. So that's big. Also, since B has less variability This is the budgeting side of me. One could plan their future earnings with more predictability. Again, what I mean by that sentence is you could maybe word it probably better, definitely better, but the idea is since the data is more closely centered, you have a better idea of what you're going to make in the future, and you at least know you're going to be making more in the future. So that's the idea. This is so varied. You could be making ginormous money, although that's rare. Those are outliers. Or you could be making, again, a high amount of money. You could be almost doubling your salary, right? Or not doubling, but getting over 60,000 when you were starting at 36,000. But this one is just a little bit, closer together. So you won't be making as much money as some people in Corporation A. I mean, you could end up somewhere here where they're back down there. You just don't know. But long story short is you have a smaller range of data, so it's more predictable what you're going to get. Okay, let's get to the scoring guideline and see what we did. Part A, median salary is approximately the same. Okay, cool. The range and interquartile range are greater than Corporation A, and the two highest salaries at Corporation A are outliers and B had no outliers. Cool, so I pretty much nailed it, which is comforting. And again, trust me, I didn't look at this scoring guideline beforehand. I'm really just starting to take in all that I'm seeing in my review for my FRQs. I guess one thing I'll say in general before going on, because we're almost done, is you really also, in stat, unfortunately, it takes a long time to see repetition in FRQs. So even with this being, I think, our third year looking at FRQs, you're still going to see some new and unique question types, but eventually you'll start to see the big trends show up. Okay. At least 30% of the salaries at Corporation A, 3 out of 30 are greater than the maximum at Corporation B. So that's a really particular way of saying it. So in other words, you might be able to make more money at Corporation A. All right, 5 years after starting, again, the minimum salary is greater. So some people at A are making 36, so they never got a raise. So you might never get a raise at A. Okay, so I think, yeah, I might not have actually gotten all the points here, but let's talk about Part A. Part A, notice I addressed the center, in other words, the median. I talked about the spread, and I talked about outliers, and gosh, did I use context? So that's one thing I could have used a little bit more of. I mean, I did have Corporation A, and I did have that, and I also, brought into the fact that we're talking about money here, but I could do a better job of explaining, center with a median around $51,000 salary 5 years later. Corporation A had more variability in their salaries. Make sure you're bringing context into it. I did a little bit. I think I could have done that more, but I still think I'm safe there. Okay. Part B. Did I give a relevant statistical measurement? Oops, lost it. So this is where I think I might have not done as good as I thought. And then, let's see here. So, yeah, so in other words, being a lot more precise with theirs, I think I could have worded this more precisely. So be careful about that. 5 years after starting. So I think at part 2, I'm definitely raising that statistical measure. And I'm also talking about variability here. So I think at part A, I would definitely emphasize the fact that there are outliers. Even though there are outliers, there is the potential of making more money than anyone at company B. I'm really bringing the data into it. So, yeah, in other words, make sure you're being really descriptive. And I'm taking up some of my time to talk through the question, and hopefully I'd be filling up that time in the exam, just really hashing out my ideas